Hello students, I'm recording this video lecture because most of you have sent me a private message that you have problems with connectivity and others do not have electric power right now. The same is true for us in our area, although not exactly in my place, but within the subdivisions, there are certain phases that do not have electric power due to the storm that just passed. Trees were uprooted, and it hit certain power lines. So I understand how it is to be able to recover from a storm like that. So that we will not uh, lag in the module that we have set, and we have a schedule. We don't want any delays. Then I'm recording this video lecture for all of you today, since this will supplement our actual Zoom meet, which was supposed to be scheduled today. All right, so we are still in one of the midterm topics, which is intercultural communication. And I would like to share with you my screen, which is the basis of our lecture today. Okay, so there you go. Let me just set it up for you. Okay, I have uploaded the link to this topic. However, we have problems. Brightspace is not showing the actual text, but I have shared this in your GCs. So everyone should have a copy of this. So now I have summarized it in a PowerPoint presentation. And I've also given you activities regarding this in your assignment and in your discussion board in Brightspace. Communicating across cultures, and why do we need to study this? According to the article in your book, from your book, it states that communicating across cultures is first challenging, since each culture has their own set of rules. There's the existence of cultural biases and prejudices. Cultural knowledge, rules, beliefs, values, phobias, and anxieties are taught explicitly. Most of the information above is absorbed subconsciously. The purpose of this lecture is for us to be able to understand that communication, the purpose of communication is to be able to be understood. It is for survival. However, since societies have evolved, now we have levels of communication now, but we are focusing on the English language. But communication as a whole uh, is affected or is influenced greatly by culture. Remember, in the first part of our lecture, I introduced the word speech community. So, speech community, group of people sharing the same language, and since they share the same language, they've come up with their own rules, they have their own lexicon. However, there is a standard to follow when it comes to a particular language. All right. So culture is a very big factor in communication. And it's very important for us to be able to understand this so that we will be able to communicate effectively. So the first point is it is challenging. It is truly challenging because every speech community has their own symbols, they have their own gestures. We have verbal and nonverbal communication. Therefore, there is a need for us to understand different cultures so that we will be able to decode the message correctly, and for us to be able to encode the message that we want to convey to them exactly the way we want it. So there's the existence of cultural biases. I will discuss a bias, the difference between a bias and a prejudice later. There are the cultural knowledge, rules, beliefs, values, phobias, ito yung fears, and anxieties are taught explicitly. What do you mean by taught explicitly? These are learned. Okay, they are learned behaviors. Since you are exposed to a certain speech community, then what you see, what you feel, what is being introduced to you is in a way taught. So these are taught explicitly, right? So ibig sabihin na hindi ito hidden. This is clearly seen. This is evident. While most of the information from these, we're talking about the cultural knowledge, rules, beliefs, values, phobias, the information wherein the individual takes this in and decodes it for his or her own purpose is subconscious. Hindi ito talaga iniisip, kundi ito ay programmed na. So there are individuals, when you show them a particular color, since the cultural beliefs, values are taught, uh, like for example, I think in the Chinese community, when white signifies it is a color for death, while in other countries the color for death is black, sa kanila white. All right. There's another case about McDonald's. I think it's in Japan. When they see a white face, that means distrust, someone who cannot be trusted. So McDonald's there with a white face will not be welcomed. Subconsciously, the brain, the mind resists it because it does not signify integrity. So what they did, they had to change the logo for Japan. They as a logo, they did not show Ronald McDonald, but they chose one of the mascots to represent the McDonald's chain of stores. Okay, kasi nga this is subconsciously absorbed. In the article, terms were mentioned: high context versus low context. In the book or in the article, the writer mentioned and enumerated countries from who are identified as high context in terms of communication and countries that are identified as low context. But what do these terms mean? High context countries depend heavily on the surrounding situation to express meaning, because we know context means a situation, a surrounding situation, like we have discussed in our previous topics, wherein communication is classified according to context. You have interpersonal, that means from person to person. You have intrapersonal, that means self-talk. And then you have uh, intercultural, which we are discussing now. You have organizational, and then you have extended. Okay, so context simply means situation, the surrounding situation wherein communication happens, and that gives us the complete meaning of the message that is being conveyed. So you have high context and you have low context. In the high context, which means individuals uh, rely heavily on the surrounding situation to be able to understand the meaning. Okay? Maraming ganyan, maraming areas. When I came from Dubai, and when you're in the Middle East, they are very it's a high context place. That means you don't really listen word for word what the speaker is saying, or you don't really read word for word what the sign says, but you look at the surrounding areas and you try to find meaning and connect it to whatever words you see or whatever is being communicated to you. And from there, you get the meaning. Like, for example, you would see you would be in a hurry and you would rush someone at the supermarket, and then the supermarket person would do this and then would say something in English, but then the pronunciation may not be very right or clear, and then they would say this, and then you would understand, that means wait, or just a little while. So this is an example of communication using high context. That means it is the surrounding situation determines the meaning more, okay, or people would decode meaning from the surrounding situations. In a low context countries, usually English speaking countries, because this is the language that they use, they prefer more exact explanation of what you want to express. So they would appreciate exact vocab, they would appreciate the tone of voice, they would ask for more details so it would be clearly expressed. So that's the meaning of the high context and low context terms mentioned in the article. So context again means situation. So in a non-speaking country, then you would presume that they belong to the high context, which is why gestures now become so important. A background of what you want to say. While in a low context situation, a country that uses English really, they would want you to expand uh, your I mean, if it's a definition or a meaning of what you would like to say, to show certain degrees. They appreciate exactness of the message. Okay, so context means situation. When it comes to sequential and synchronic, okay, it has something to do with uh, time. Okay, let me just check the term. So this is sequential and synchronic. I will just have to correct the spelling of this term. That is synchronic, sequential and synchronic. These terms are always associated with time. So this refers to the understanding of time. Sequential means one after the other. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is sequential. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That is sequential. 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003. Then you have A, B, C, D. So that is sequential. It follows a certain order, one after the other. So here, countries identified who communicate more of a mindset of sequential means they look at time as linear. When you're trying to express your ideas, it should be in a sequence. So you say firstly, that's why you have transition words, okay, or signposts. Firstly, secondly, thirdly, fourthly, finally. Okay, that's the reason why. And if you're trying to refer to something in the past, do not mix it with something in the future or at present, because they do not think that way. So they get confused. Wait, you were talking about the past a while ago. Now you're mentioning something in the present, and then you're going to attach something in the future. I cannot understand. I'm confused. Okay, so they usually say that, wait, I'm confused. They cannot take in topics one after the other all together. If you're talking about mom, have mom first. After mom, if you want to talk about dad, talk about dad later. You cannot mix mom with dad and then insert a memory that happened before. They cannot think that way. Okay, then they become confused and they would say that you cannot communicate very effectively. And sometimes most of the time, there will be communication breakdown and maybe and most likely no communication at all because of misunderstanding. So you have to understand that other people think sequentially, while there are others who are synchronous, synchronic countries, including Asia, uh, wherein time is circular. That means it's not linear. We can mix the past and talk about the present and then connect it to the future, and we have no problem with that. Sometimes we presume that the person understands that we are talking about this and about that. It was yesterday, next day it will be about tomorrow. Okay. uh, for us, we understand that because we have been wired that way, but for other individuals, for other countries, they cannot. Okay, then meaning will get lost. There will be confusion, there will be ambiguity, and that is not good when it comes to communication. So feedback here is very important, so that you may understand that people don't receive information the same way. If you're a boss, this is very important in giving instructions. If you are an employee, it's very important for you to understand the mindset of your boss, so that if you want to provide feedback, then you would be able to match it to how he or she thinks. Okay, this, you will appreciate this if you start to work or you start to do activities in a multicultural setting wherein there are different nationalities with you. So then you have the third term, affective versus neutral. Affective has something to do with emotions, affect, something that is abstract. Okay, while neutral would be something at the middle, no left, no right, no up, no down, just where it is. That is neutral. So affective and neutral has something to do with how people communicate, wherein their emotions interfere with their communication, right? Filipinos are very affective when it comes to communication. So let's check how this has been defined in your book. So, this has something to do with emotions and how one expresses it through communication. Countries who are affective express meaning with minimal control in terms of their emotions. They lash out right away. They express what is in their heart. They use very descriptive words just to be able to express their emotions. And their messages are full of emotional tones, while in other countries, they believe that emotions should be held back. These should be controlled, always be put to check, so that you will have to just focus on the issue. Kung ano lang yung issue, yun lang ang issue. But the others, they can't focus so much on the issue because it's always covered, or it's always colored with emotional tones. Other nationalities do not understand that, nor do they appreciate it, because they want to just talk about the issue at hand. Issue, wala na yung of the past, ito kasi nangyari, itong pakiramdam ko, itong sa tingin ko hindi yan maganda. The others, they don't understand that. And they don't see that as an effective way to communicate. So if you're asked to check if the product is okay, then the basis should be what you see from the product. It cannot be based on how you experience using the product or no. That would be highly subjective. So in neutral countries, they are more objective when it comes to delivering messages. They avoid a play of emotions because that would be highly subjective. So affective and neutral has something to do with emotions, emotions that affect your communication. At times, we're not talking about feelings. We're talking about things or concept or issues. But in a country or in a community that is neutral, they would like to have facts more rather than opinion. So yan yun eh. Affective will be an opinion-driven communication or message, while a neutral one would be a fact-based uh, basis of communication. So what is a cultural bias? Cultural biases are things that you favor without real evidence. It is highly subjective. What do you mean by objective and subjective? Objective would be you have a clear criteria, something that is standardized, something that would be general to all. Subjective would be each one to his own. Like beauty. Beauty is highly subjective. What may be beautiful to you may not be beautiful to others. What may be smart to you may not be smart to others. What may be great to you may not be great to others. So these are subjective concepts. An opinion is highly subjective. A bias is highly subjective. So bias means a preference, something that you favor. For example, in the Chinese culture, they believe that a round-faced person is good luck. Okay, so if they would hire people, round faces and big noses would get the priority because that is a cultural bias. Filipinos, we prefer people who are fair skinned, and we look down on people who are dark skinned. That is a cultural bias influenced by uh, those who exacted power over us before in our history, di ba? Yung mga sumakop sa atin, mga Espanyol, mga puputi mga yan, mga Amerikano, we see them as superior. So nadala natin yan. So lahat ng tao, pag nakita natin maputi, sa atin may bias tayo dyan. Gusto natin yan. At so bumibenta nga dito ang mga sabon na pampaputi eh. So see, the information is subconsciously absorbed. See, hindi mo alam, programmed ka in a certain way. So cultural bias is something, a preference that is subconscious, right? And is highly subjective. The opposite would be a cultural prejudice. What is a prejudice? Prejudice means it is something you dislike without real evidence. It is highly subjective. So if bias is positive, prejudice is negative. Like in other countries, remember nagkaroon ng rally on Black Lives Matter. Why? Because there's a cultural prejudice in the color. Okay? So there are certain words that we avoid. We don't call the person Negro. That is very malakas ang ano ng prejudice yan tsaka discrimination. We say colored. Dati nga black allowed eh. Pero ngayon hindi na rin allowed ang black. So they would say dark or they would say colored. Okay? Kasi merong cultural prejudices. So you have cultural biases and then you have cultural prejudices. So these things are very important when it comes to communicating across cultures. Why? We want to communicate effectively, and we do not want certain factors to interfere with the message that we want to convey to our audience. So it is really important. It is very uh, it is of great urgency, lalo na ngayon, globalization, for you to be able to understand these concepts and apply them. Because to be able to communicate effectively will open doors for you. And we know that the Filipino is global, and the main resource of the Philippines is its people, yung OFW. So hindi natin ito maiiwasan, hindi natin ito matatakasan. We have to maximize whatever we have at that moment, and to be able to communicate effectively will bring a lot of benefits for all of you. So I hope you learned something from this video lecture. Please send through GC if you have certain questions so we can have clarification. And as we proceed, as we continue to discuss side by side the essay writing, which is also a topic for the midterm. So God bless everyone. Stay safe. Have a nice day.